Let's get some analysis now with Alexey Muraviev. He's an Associate Professor of National Security and Strategic Studies at Curtin University and joins us now from Perth, Australia. Welcome back to the program, Professor. It looks like both Germany and the US are on the verge of sending their advanced tanks to Ukraine. What difference will they make to Kiev's defences? Will they be the game changer that Ukraine is hoping?
Look, I think we need to understand that at this point in time, we're talking about limited numbers. And if we're talking about just several dozen these pretty advanced war machines, they're not going to make a huge difference on this massive and vast battlefront. We need to remember that Ukraine started this war with some 2,000 operational main battle tanks. Currently, and in addition, they've been supplied to almost 1,000 additional Soviet-made battle tanks, which was traveled from across arsenals of former Warsaw Pact bloc countries in Eastern and Central Europe. And currently, Ukraine operates maybe around 700 or 800 main battle tanks. So they lost quite a bit. And even with an addition of several hundred Soviet-era main battle tanks, it didn't make much of a huge difference in terms of Ukraine taking considerable advantage in this war. So if we're talking about small numbers, again, they may achieve tactical successes, but then we need to remember about a couple of issues. One is maintenance. We're talking about Ukraine receiving British-made Challenger main battle tank, German Leopard, and possibly the Abrams. Leave alone operating those, driving those tanks will be a big question, and I doubt that Ukrainians will be trained in time to operate this machinery. So are we now talking about sending Western tank groups to actually operate tanks if they will arrive into Ukraine now? And that is a game changer in terms of NATO's and US direct involvement in the war. Secondly, servicing those main battle tanks. Already, as Ukraine is experienced servicing, for example, advanced artillery systems, multiple rocket missile launches, and some other systems requires to send those systems to, say, neighboring Lithuania or Poland. Talking about moving main battle tanks back and forward because they're high maintenance, because of sophisticated systems, would provide additional logistical challenges to Ukraine, leave alone, obviously, ongoing threats coming from Russia's ability to actually destroy them on the battlefield.
Now, Germany has justified its reluctance to send its Leopard tanks to Ukraine by saying it doesn't want to escalate the conflict. Indeed, Moscow says the tank deliveries would be a blatant provocation. Is Berlin's cautious approach a reasonable one? Do these tanks risk raising the ire of Moscow?
Look, when the Russians talk about the blatant provocation, I think that's kind of, I'm not really sure what they mean by that. They're at war. They started this war. So what the West is doing is responding in kind by providing its de facto ally, because Ukraine doesn't have any formal military agreements with the West, with what is required. In terms of Germany's caution, I think it's more to do perhaps with the memory that Germany has. That the very fact that German Panzer will once again ride across the steppes of Ukraine or in other regions of Ukraine would not resonate really well, because the Russians continue to play this Nazi fighting the Nazism card, and certainly the Russian propaganda will use this narrative pretty strongly in order to say, well, before we were fighting the Panthers and the Tigers, now we're fighting the Leopards. And I think the Germans certainly feel very cautious about not being compared to the Third Reich, not being compared to the Nazi Germany that invaded the Soviet Union, including Soviet Ukraine, back in 1941, and for 3 years it occupied the country. So perhaps that's certainly the principal driving element, which also shaped up Germany's behavior when it came to, for example, the buildup of its own defense forces in post-1945 environment, or the export of military technology to certain countries.
Okay, Professor Alexey Muraviev, we'll have to leave it there, but it's always great to get your analysis. Thank you.